This is an introduction to the Fluent Farsi course where you will learn how to speak in Farsi. We strongly suggest that you watch this video from the beginning to the end because you will find invaluable information here on what to avoid and what to go for when it comes to different systems and applications that claim to teach you how to speak in Farsi. It is extremely important to mention right from the very beginning that Farsi is not exactly one language, and what most other Farsi classes and Farsi online programs and courses and applications offer, even what the very famous ones offer, will not give you the ability to speak Farsi like Farsi speakers. Because what they offer is almost always written Farsi, not spoken Farsi. Spoken Farsi is what we offer through Fluent Farsi lessons. Through ordinary Farsi classes or very famous softwares and programs, you will learn to read Farsi and write Farsi, but you won't learn how to speak in Farsi, because spoken Farsi is very different from written Farsi. The point is that what other classes and books and softwares and programs offer as teaching Farsi in almost all cases is just teaching written Farsi, not spoken Farsi. This is the one most important point that most Farsi learners are not aware of, as they have this incorrect assumption that learning written Farsi in general is equal to being able to speak Farsi. And unfortunately, most Farsi classes and most Farsi softwares and programs, even the very famous ones, fail to mention this very fact, that you won't be able to have a normal conversation in Farsi just by learning written Farsi. And the students, most of the times, become aware of this the hard way and experience a rude awakening after they spend a lot of time and a lot of money on dealing with teachings that do not offer them the ability to speak in Farsi. I will explain this in more details later on in this video, and that is why we invite you to watch this video till the end to learn more about the do's and don'ts of learning how to speak in Farsi and how to avoid the mistakes that most other Farsi students make because of lack of information. The fact is that you cannot easily find this information anywhere else. Before dealing with those issues though, let me briefly introduce this language first. So, what is Farsi? Farsi is the official language of Iran, and in addition to Iran, millions of people in Middle East and Asia also speak Farsi. There is a specific name for this language in English, which is the word Persian. The words Farsi and Persian both refer to the same language. The lessons we offer here are based on the Farsi language that people in Iran speak in. This may surprise you, but actually in a way Farsi is not exactly one language. Modern Farsi has two aspects to it, which are written Farsi and spoken Farsi. Written Farsi is mostly used in books and newspapers and official written documents. Written Farsi has a very clear grammar, everything is in the right order, and it represents the official aspect of this beautiful and rich language. Spoken Farsi, on the other hand, is not like written Farsi, and we are going to take a look at the differences between the two in a moment. Spoken Farsi is what Iranian people use when they speak the language. Spoken Farsi is different from written Farsi. Sometimes written Farsi and spoken Farsi overlap, and some other times they move in different directions. What other classes and books and other programs and softwares and applications teach you is mostly written Farsi, whereas what we teach you is exactly spoken Farsi. Let's take a look at some of the differences between written Farsi and spoken Farsi. The pronunciations of many words differ in written Farsi versus spoken Farsi. For example, the written Farsi word for suitcase is chamedan, whereas in spoken Farsi we change this word to some degree and say it as chamedun. Another example, in written Farsi the word for day is anha, whereas in spoken Farsi we change this word to una. We will teach you the exact spoken Farsi versions of the words, and the fact of the matter is that in most cases you cannot find this kind of teachings in what others offer, because what they offer is almost always written Farsi, in which you do not encounter the changed versions of the words that we use in spoken Farsi. The next point is this. There are some words that are specific to spoken Farsi, and in written Farsi we do not use them. For example, one of the words that we use in spoken Farsi for the word for is the word wase, which is not a word that we use in written Farsi. We have explained this word and other words like this in details in our lessons. Another big difference between spoken Farsi and written Farsi is the fact that in spoken Farsi we tend to combine and condense words and make one word out of 2 or 3 words. For example, for the sentence, "That is my blue shirt," in written Farsi we write this sentence, "آن پیراهن آبی من است." Whereas in spoken Farsi we say this, "اون پیراهن آبیمه." As you see, we have a shorter sentence in spoken Farsi in which, by the way, the pronunciation of the words are also somehow different. There are sometimes some exceptions to this rule though, and we teach those exceptions too. The linguistic mechanics and the rules of how to combine the words is something that is specific to spoken Farsi, and you cannot learn these functions and rules by only learning written Farsi. We teach you all of the relevant rules in this regard. The next point is about the verbs. The conjugation of verbs is often different between written Farsi and spoken Farsi. For example, the translation of the following sentence, "He goes," in written Farsi is "او میرود," whereas the same sentence in spoken Farsi becomes "اون میره." This example shows that for the word goes, we have 2 different versions in written Farsi versus spoken Farsi. There are also some other differences between written Farsi and spoken Farsi. For example, sometimes in spoken Farsi we tend to break a sentence and change the position of the verb and other parts of the sentence, but this almost never happens in written Farsi. This means that written Farsi is less flexible, and usually the structure of the sentence is in a way that the subject is at the very beginning of the sentence and the verb is at the very end of the sentence. In spoken Farsi, however, the sentences are more flexible. We change the order of the words in a variety of ways, and sometimes we drop the subject of the sentence. You need to learn the rules on where and when to change the order of the words in a sentence in spoken Farsi to convey what you tend to say in a more meaningful way. You will find the details in our lessons. Another point is that sometimes in spoken Farsi we drop 1 or 2 words and the sentence still means the exact same thing. For example, if someone asks you in Farsi, "Where is my book?" Instead of saying "your book is here," which in written Farsi becomes "کتاب شما اینجا است," you could just say "is here." And then in spoken Farsi we combine the word "is" with the word "here," and so we end up with this one word "اینجاست," which means "is here." The other aspect of learning Farsi in general is what we may call as the levels of respect. This means that, for example, if you want to say the same sentence, the way you address an elderly man, and so the choice of words, is different from the way you address a child. Detailed explanations are provided in the Fluent Farsi lessons, and we invite you to watch the videos and learn more in this regard. When it comes to speaking Farsi, the other point is the fact that the intonation and the tone of the Farsi speaker both play a significant role in what they mean to say. And so we teach you how to pronounce Farsi words appropriately and with the correct intonation in different situations, as this is one of the big differences between written Farsi on one hand and spoken Farsi on the other hand. Let's take a look at an example to see the role of the correct intonation. The sentence is this: "He goes," which in written Farsi becomes "او میرود," and in spoken Farsi becomes "اون میره." Now in written Farsi, to ask a polar question, which means the question whose expected answer is yes or no, we use the word آیا at the beginning of the sentence. So to ask "Does he go?" in written Farsi, we write this: آیا او میرود. However, in spoken Farsi, not only we change the words, but also when it comes to asking a yes-no question, instead of using a word like do or does, we simply change our intonation, and so we do not use the word آیا at all. This way, the same question, which is "Does he go?" in spoken Farsi becomes اون میره. So we just changed the intonation without adding another word, and the sentence became a question. Let's hear both spoken Farsi versions one more time. He goes. اون میره. Does he go? اون میره. This example shows that the intonation plays a very significant role in spoken Farsi. And in our lessons, we will learn how to use the right intonation in various situations in spoken Farsi. The intonations in spoken Farsi are different in different situations, and this is something that we completely cover in our lessons. If you only learn written Farsi and just say it loudly, which is usually the only thing that the other classes and online very famous courses and programs offer, we will miss all of the absolutely important aspects of spoken Farsi that we mentioned. What most of those other classes and courses teach you is written Farsi, and if you just say written Farsi loudly, what you say is as if you are reading a weird version of a book or a newspaper for another person. Saying written Farsi loudly is not speaking Farsi, and it sounds really weird to the ears of Farsi speakers if you try to have a normal conversation by saying written Farsi sentences loudly. As an example, imagine that you want to have a normal English conversation with a person, but that person replies to you in Shakespearean style, using a choice of words that a normal English speaker never uses in everyday normal conversations, and with an intonation that is more appropriate for a play in a theater. This is an exaggerated example to show you some of the differences between saying written Farsi sentences loudly versus having a normal Farsi conversation. And still, this is exactly what most of the other classes and most of the other very famous courses and programs and softwares and phone applications offer to the interested Farsi students, who are usually unaware of the fact that what they are learning will not teach them how to have a normal conversation in Farsi. Some of those very famous courses and programs use interactive softwares that can hear your voice through the microphone and give you feedback on the quality of your pronunciations. But as they only offer written Farsi, what all those interactive softwares do for you is just to give you feedback on the pronunciation of not spoken Farsi, but written Farsi words and sentences. Those interactive softwares are not designed to teach you spoken Farsi. And so they are mostly there to make you believe that you are speaking the language, whereas what you are actually saying loudly is a weird, unusual version of written Farsi. And no genuine Farsi speaker says most of those things, and no Farsi speaker talks like that. So, these softwares teach you to loudly say a version of the language that nobody uses for speaking purposes. If you talk in written Farsi, at the same time that it sounds very weird to the ears of Iranian people, and what you are saying is being spoken in an unusual and abnormal and strange and unnecessarily very formal way, people may still understand you. But then the next problem is that when they reply back, this time it is you who cannot understand them. Because no matter what you said and how you said it, they will use the spoken Farsi to reply to you. And if you are not familiar with the spoken Farsi, you cannot fully understand what it is they are saying. So, what most of the other courses and classes and very famous programs and softwares and tablet and phone applications offer at their very best is not a two-way but a one-way weird, unusual oral communication, which is not a spoken Farsi by any stretch of imagination. Almost all of the other Farsi programs work on your writing skills and reading skills. Our material, on the other hand, has a sharp step-by-step focus on teaching you how to speak Farsi correctly, and this is something that is very hard, almost impossible to find anywhere else. In rare occasions, you may find some scattered bits and pieces and some short samples of spoken Farsi in some of the books. But again, the focus of most of those books is on written Farsi. That is what they teach, and that is what the students learn. Those other resources do not teach the mechanics of correct spoken Farsi sentences. By learning the material in those books and in those very famous programs and softwares, students learn how to read Farsi and how to write Farsi. However, they don't learn how to speak Farsi. Some other famous programs offer a very bad mixture of written Farsi and spoken Farsi in the format of audio files without any detailed explanations. These programs offer a version of the language that doesn't exist anywhere else other than in their audio files. Modern Farsi is either written or spoken. A badly manufactured and uneven version of Farsi, which is what they teach, is of little use. They incorporated some spoken Farsi in their lessons. But one of the problems, for example, is that the conjugations of all verbs in those audio files are in written Farsi. They offer a very unreal version of Farsi, in which they have arbitrarily decided to change some parts of written Farsi into spoken Farsi, and also decided not to change the other parts, and so left them to remain in written Farsi. Those audio files are not a representation of how people write the language, and are not a representation of how people speak the language. Those audio files are a bad and forced mixture of some written Farsi and some spoken Farsi, and they ended up to be neither of them. Fluent Farsi, on the other hand, teaches you the mechanics of correct spoken Farsi and structured step-by-step instructions on how to speak Farsi. If you only use those other classes and books and very famous Farsi courses and programs and softwares and applications, you will learn how to read and how to write in Farsi, but most likely you will not learn how to speak in Farsi. We teach you how to speak in Farsi by teaching you the following: the differences in pronunciation of spoken Farsi words versus written Farsi words, the differences in the conjugations of the verbs in spoken Farsi versus written Farsi, the combined versions of the words that are specific to spoken Farsi, and the words that are used only in spoken Farsi, the shorter versions of the same sentences by dropping specific words in spoken Farsi, the changes in the order of the words that are specific to spoken Farsi, the levels of respect that play a crucial role when someone speaks in Farsi, the changes in intonation that could change the meaning of the sentence altogether in spoken Farsi, and lots of other rules and information that are specific to spoken Farsi. We teach you these, others in most cases do not teach you any of these. When you want to choose a Farsi teaching system to register for, the right question to ask is this: do they offer any of these aspects of spoken Farsi? If the answer is no, then they do not offer what you are looking for. We, on the other hand, offer all of these aspects for sure. Now, let's take a look at our method of teaching and its specifications. The lessons are in the format of 24 videos, each one about 30 minutes. The videos contain 80 lessons, and each lesson is accompanied by its own practice and exercise. All the explanations are in English, and you would gain a very clear understanding of the various aspects of the topic at hand. Our spoken Farsi lessons have been designed by knowledgeable and experienced language experts. The amount of education that you receive is more or less equal to attending a language class for 10 to 12 months. And this is if you manage to find a Farsi class in which they focus on teaching a spoken Farsi, which is rare because most of the Farsi language classes focus on teaching written Farsi. To learn spoken Farsi, receiving private tutoring could be helpful to some degree, but in most cases what you end up learning is an unorganized mixture of written Farsi and some spoken Farsi, for which you have to pay way more than what you would pay for our course. The cost of our lessons is also much cheaper than what you have to pay for 10 to 12 months of Farsi classes in a language school. This means that compared to the alternatives, the Fluent Farsi course in spoken Farsi is not expensive. Also take into consideration the fact that most likely you cannot find anything like our spoken Farsi course anywhere else. The other thing you should take into consideration is the fact that language classes and private tutoring, by their very nature, are one-time deals, as they happen only once. Whereas you can go back to our lessons and watch them again and learn from them again, and you can do this for as many times as you like. So, this is your chance to learn spoken Farsi without the need to attend a class, without the need to receive private tutoring, and without the need to learn Farsi alphabet, which I am going to explain now. Let's take a look at the format of the lessons in our 24 educational videos. As you see, the screen is divided into 3 zones or sections. The left side is where you see the English words and the English sentences. The right side is where the learning happens, in which you see the spoken Farsi translations of the same English words and sentences that first appeared on the left side. Everything on the right side will be spoken Farsi written by using English alphabet. This way you are able to read the Farsi words on the right side without a need to know the Farsi letters and Farsi alphabet. At the same time that you see words and sentences on both sides, you will hear the pronunciations and the explanations, the rules and the reasons and the logic and the grammar of the spoken Farsi sentences. So, you see the words and sentences in English first, and then in spoken Farsi, and at the same time you hear the relevant explanations and the details on the various aspects of the material. The third section is at the lower side of the screen, in which we have also provided the exact same spoken Farsi words and sentences that showed up on the right side by means of Farsi letters. This lower section is a repetition of material on the right side. The only difference is that on the right side, we use the English alphabet for the spoken Farsi words and sentences, whereas in the lower section, we use the Farsi alphabet for the same spoken Farsi words and sentences. This lower section is beneficial for those of you who already know Farsi alphabet and are interested to see the material in Farsi letters too. The lower section, however, contains no new material and no new information, and it is not the focus of the teachings. The lower section is just a mirror of what is happening on the right side. The teachings are focused on the right side of the screen, where everything is presented in English letters. Let's take a look at how we present our material in the page with 3 sections. The sentence in English which you see on the left side is, he goes. After you see the English sentence, then the Farsi sentence shows up on the right side, which is, un mire. And you hear the detailed explanations regarding the mechanics and the grammar and the governing rules to make that sentence and similar sentences with other conjugations of that verb. And you will see more examples as the teaching continues in the video. At the same time that the Farsi sentence appears on the right side, the same exact spoken Farsi sentence also shows up in the third section of the page in Farsi letters from right to left. This slide is a sample of the design of our lessons. The sentence in the Farsi letters in the third section of the page is a mirror of the sentence in the upper right hand section, so it doesn't contain any new information. It may look like a new thing is happening in the third section, but it is the same sentence you see in the upper right hand section. The only difference between the two is this. In the upper right hand section, everything is written using English alphabet. And in the lower third section, the same material is being presented by using Farsi alphabet. If you do not know Farsi letters and Farsi alphabet, you can simply disregard the lower section of the screen, because nothing new is happening in that section. The design of the course is based on the assumption that you do not know Farsi letters and Farsi alphabet. And this continues to be the case throughout the whole 24 videos, which means that at no point in our teachings you need to learn Farsi letters and Farsi alphabet. By the way, learning how to read Farsi and how to write Farsi is a great thing to do. However, in our spoken Farsi lessons, you simply do not need to learn how to read and write in Farsi, because the focus of our lessons is on teaching spoken Farsi through English by using English letters and English alphabet. Our purpose is to teach you how to speak the language, and so we do not deal with teaching the Farsi alphabet, which is what you need if you want to write and read the language. If you are interested to learn how to write and read the Farsi language, there are many good classes and many good books that you can use. However, If you are more interested to speak the language, then our spoken Farsi course is what you need. One more thing, the reason that most Farsi classes and most Farsi books do not offer organized and professional spoken Farsi courses and material has something to do with the fact that Iranian people do not learn spoken Farsi in an official setting. When children are born, they hear the spoken version of Farsi and they learn how to speak the language naturally. And when they go to school, what they learned in the school as Farsi is actually only written Farsi. Nobody teaches spoken Farsi in Iran in the primary schools because the assumption is that by default, everybody already knows the spoken Farsi. Considering that, what Iranian people generally consider as the activity of teaching and learning the Farsi language is the written version of the language. However, experience showed us that what most non-Iranian people who want to learn Farsi are interested in is the ability to speak the language. This is why in many cases, learning Farsi for non-Iranian students becomes a frustrating issue, because what they are interested in, which is the ability to speak the language, is not what they are being offered in most of the Farsi classes and Farsi courses online and offline. Because in most Farsi classes and most Farsi courses and programs, what is being offered is written Farsi, not a spoken Farsi. Add to that the fact that usually Farsi classes and Farsi courses online and offline offer no explanation about the huge differences between written Farsi on one hand and spoken Farsi on the other hand. And so, when students go to these other classes and courses online and offline, although they think that they are going to learn how to speak in Farsi, the fact of the matter is that in almost all cases, what they are learning is not what they were hopeful to learn at all, because the educational material that they will learn from and they paid lots of money for only teaches them written Farsi, not a spoken Farsi. So, highly motivated students register for Farsi classes, and then little by little they notice that what they are learning, which is written Farsi, is mostly not what they were interested in, which is the ability to speak in Farsi. This indeed is a cause of frustration. However, the good news is that what we offer is to teach you exactly what you are looking for, which is the education you need to be able to precisely speak in Farsi. This is why our course is a unique course, and this is why you are in the right place with us, because we care for what you need. Now, let's take another look at our sample page. I would like to mention something about the third section on the lower side of the page where you see the material written in Farsi. This explanation is for those of you who are familiar with written Farsi. And again, as the third lower section of the page is a mirror of what is happening in the upper right hand of the page, what I am about to explain is of no consequence to our teaching method. The point I would like to make about the third lower section is this. What you see in that section in Farsi letters is not the official written Farsi. It looks very much like written Farsi, but it is not. What you see in that section is the written form of a spoken Farsi. It is possible to write the spoken Farsi, and that is what we have done for educational purposes. However, the written form of a spoken Farsi is not equal to the official written Farsi. Saying Farsi loudly doesn't make it spoken Farsi. It remains written Farsi. Similar to that, writing a spoken Farsi doesn't make it written Farsi. It becomes the written form of a spoken Farsi. In the third section, we offer the written form of a spoken Farsi for educational purposes. What we offer in the third section, although it has been written by using Farsi letters, is not written Farsi. It is exactly what you hear as normal spoken Farsi if you speak it loudly. What you see here in this section is a spoken Farsi in written form. Again, I would like to mention that the offered explanation is only for those of you who are already familiar with written Farsi. What happens in the third section has no bearing whatsoever on what we teach and what you learn, as it is all being done using English letters. As we have already maintained, the focus of our teachings is on the upper right hand section in which everything happens by using English letters. The next point is this. As some of you may use your mobile phones to watch the videos to learn spoken Farsi, to make it easier for you, at the end of each lesson, I show the four corners of the screen in a zoomed in manner so that you could see more details. This is going to happen like this. This gives you a chance to pause the video for as long as you need and study the details, as you could see a larger version of the material in the lesson. Right now there is nothing in the fourth angle, but after you begin to learn Farsi, you would see many words and sentences on each single page and in all three sections. You can use all devices of your choice, as the lessons are online. Fluent Farsi videos work with all desktops and laptops and tablets and mobile phones. The last point is about your speed of learning. The videos contain a massive amount of information, and so you should dedicate and devote enough time to learn the material. You should not rush through them, because our brains need time to process a new language. For 8 weeks, every week the system releases 3 new videos, and you will have full and continuous access to all the previous videos for sure. Our recommendation is for you to watch 2 videos per week and focus your efforts on practicing the material so that you could incorporate and integrate the teachings from the previous lessons into your learning process. The best way to learn spoken Farsi is to say the words and the sentences loudly and repeatedly. We have explained the details of how to practice the material in the first video of the series. You need to spend time to continuously practice everything you learn. We teach you how to precisely speak in Farsi, and we are delighted to have you with us. And remember that there is a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose and you have everything to gain. So, register now and let's begin to learn spoken Farsi.